And we didn't make any profit, but just the fact that we brought in $100,000 in top line revenue, we were like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And it was just sheer hustle. If we couldn't sell the truffles, we literally would cold call rich people to book private dinners. You know what I mean? Like, just sheer nonstop hustle. We were prepping these dinners out of this 400 square foot cottage with like a miniature oven, miniature fridge.
Yeah.
Like, all the truffles we stored in like mini fridges just stacked up on top of each other. Mm-hmm. Like, Tyler lived basically on the floor. We lived on the floor, you know. And so the little bit of, it was like you started to get a little bit of a taste of a freedom of what having your own business can do, you know? And we decided to, you know, continue Truffle Shuffle.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you know, we never wanted to be like truffle hustlers.
Yeah.
But we saw an opportunity to create something, you know, and and I think a lot of businesses start like this, you know, like, you see that I can buy this for this much and sell it for this much and make a profit.
Yeah.
And then as you do it, you hit a point where you're like, well, in order to grow this, I need 30 more of me, you know?
Yeah.
So then you ask yourself, well, how do I grow this without 30 more of me? And our answer for that was products. And we're like, all right, well, what if we don't have to sell it, if it's on a shelf, someone else will sell it, right? Yeah. The store will sell it or whoever. We just have to make it. We got to get it there.
Yeah.
And so we're like, all right, well, yeah, let's do products. And so we launched a Balinese truffle salt.
Now, this truffle salt, that was a pretty cool story, man. Like, you went to Bali.
Yeah.
Right? And you hung out with this family that makes this salt. How long were you out there?
So me and Sarah went to Bali on our honeymoon.
Okay.
And so we got married in March. And
2018.
2019 now.
2019 now.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we got married in March, and I hope that's correct. And
she's going to listen.
We went on our honeymoon. And we go on our honeymoon, we go to Bali, and we were there for about a week. And I just wanted to see how salt was made. Yeah. Right? So we're in Bali. I knew that they made salt in Bali, but you can't find any information about it. There's no Balinese salt farmer has a website. Yeah. Right? Like, they just don't. They have, touch phone or like the old Nokia cell phones. You know?
Yeah.
So no computers. None of them have a website. So, but what we did find is that in a little village called Kusamba, that they have had like previous salt farm tours there. So we're like, okay. And so we're about halfway through this thing. We decided to rent some scooters, and we drive up to Kusamba. We get to Kusamba, and we're literally in the middle of Kusamba, and it's not a tourist town. There's no tourists there, right? And so we're in Kusamba, stop the scooter, we're at the stoplight, and everyone is like, what are you doing here? Yeah. And I look around, and I see a sign that says, Kusamba Salt Farmer. It was like taped on the side of a building, and I was like, I point to the sign, and these guys are like, oh, you want to see the salt farm? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, okay. And take me down this road, get to the end of the road, and it's like a port for a fast boat. Yeah. So there's literally like 1,000 scooters stacked up, right? And so they tell me to park the scooter, and so I park it next to all these other scooters. They told me to leave the helmet with the scooter, and it was crazy. All these helmets were still on all these scooters. Like, nobody messed with anyone else's stuff there. And they take me through this beach, opens up into a clearing. In this clearing, you see, like, these bamboo trays, right? And it's all this salt drying. And as we got closer, this lady woke up. She had this pink towel on her head, came out with a blue spoon with a heaping of this sea salt, right? And so I'm sure they had kind of like a system for this, and brings the sea salt out. And when I tasted it, it was the best salt I had ever tasted in my life. And we spent that afternoon with the family and learned about the salt farm. They showed us how they made it. And the process to make sea salt is unbelievably difficult. We won't get into it, but it takes about 30 days just to make sea salt, you know? And they told me essentially that they've been doing this for about 60 years. The grandmother there, her name was Werney. Her husband just recently passed away. And the whole goal was to pass this salt farm on to their kids. But in the time that they've been growing this salt farm in Indonesia, they have factories.
Yeah.
The factories produce 2 tons of salt a day.
Yeah.
And so they're making everything by hand, right? And they can produce maybe 30 kilos a day. So, you know, I don't know, 0.5% or whatever that math is. And there's no way they can keep up. And so they had all this salt stacked up that a Japanese company was supposed to buy because Japan is very close to Bali. And that company never came. And so we took just a 1 kilo bag of the salt home. Really with, you know, we know we wanted to do a product, but I was like, I don't, you know, is it truffle salt or, you know, not really with a clear idea in mind. And when we got back here, we had gotten this truffle powder and we mixed the truffle powder with the Balinese truffle salt. We mixed it together. And then when we tasted it, literally I looked at Tyler and I told him that this would make us $1 million. And it was just so spot on.
Yeah.
And so we decided to launch that as a product. And we had never launched a product before. And normally we learned it takes companies like 2 years to do this.
Yeah.
We did not know that. So we start getting everything together, but the biggest issue is we don't have any salt. And then the WhatsApp number that the family gave me, nobody will answer. And so we literally made the decision to fly all the way back to Bali.
This time you bring a film crew.
We brought Andy.
Yeah.
And got it all on film. And honestly, when I think about it now, like, we did not have a lot of money in the bank. You know, we had no investors.
Yeah.
And to fly to Bali, to get more salt, like, just our confidence in that back then is kind of like surreal to me now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, that's like a $3,000 trip in a company that was only making like $30,000 a month.
Yeah.
You know? And so we go back to Bali, we get this footage, we get this salt. When we showed back up, the family had actually kept my business card on their little hut. And they're like, we knew you would come back. And then we bought all the salt that they had stacked up from that Japanese company that didn't buy it.
Yeah.
Loaded it up into this tiny little car that we had rented. I thought it was a good idea to get this little car, and it was a horrible idea. We could have easily just got a nicer car, but we got this little. I thought it looked good for the video, and it broke down at every turn. It was such a bad idea.
There you go. Aesthetics will usually fuck shit up.
Yeah.
So, how happy was this family when you went over there and bought all that salt?
Dude, I mean, they were blown out of the water. Like,
that's so cool.
And, you know, the biggest thing that made an impact to me was I was making a joke. I was like, do the kids work on the salt farm? And so, you know, it's the grandmother, the son, another daughter. They both have spouses, and then there's kids. There's like 6 kids running around. And these kids had never seen face emojis. And so that is one of the greatest pleasures of my entire life is showing these kids. I held the iPhone to them, and then they would see like cat ears form, you know what I mean, or mustaches and things like that. I literally did that with them for like 3 hours. It was the funniest thing of my life.
That's amazing.
And what kind of made an impact to me is I asked them. I was like, do they work on the salt farm? You know, I was like, you put them to work on the salt farm, right? And honestly, I was kind of making a joke, but I honestly thought they worked on the salt farm.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, we work on the salt farm so they can go to school. And I was like, wow. I felt a little embarrassed, you know what I mean? And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And so they had so much pride in making this salt that they this was their way of life. This was what they were contributing to the world, was creating this salt. And so we've been able to continue supporting that family, and we bring this salt back here, right? And we launched this as a product, and we put together this whole email campaign. And throughout this whole process, I read as many books as I can get my hands on. And so at this stage, I'm reading like product launch books and marketing books, and I'm trying to figure out how do we sell this,
Yeah.
And I read this old book about like the email launch strategy, and I did not know that this strategy was like 10 years outdated. Right?
You were like, I got this new fucking thing. We're gonna kill it.
Yeah, totally. You know what I mean? And it was a very good strategy when email was first invented.
Yeah,
and it was basically this: like you keep sending these emails with a story, all anticipating like a day when it's available.
Yeah,
right. But nobody cares. People want one email, quick copy, button to buy, right?
Yeah.
And so by the time we sent that last email for them to buy, we sold 2 jars of salt. 2 jars, $40.
Yeah.
We had enough for 10,000 units. And so we started going to stores and doing product demos in stores. And
that's right. I remember I'd call you and be like, yo, we're in this store right now. Hey, you, try some of this truffle salt. Yeah. I'd be like, you're talking to customers that way.
It's a Balinese truffle salt. All the salt comes from a single family in Bali. It's made 20% actual truffles and a touch of mushrooms. Goes great with a little goat cheese and rusted bakery crackers. And honestly, it is unbelievable on some sliced tomatoes.
Damn.
We would say that like 400 times a day.
Yeah.
Right? And so we start doing that, and we go up to Oakville Grocery, and we start selling this salt, right? We started selling like 100 jars a day. And that's when we were like, all right, maybe we are really onto something. And selling 100 jars a day of this stuff, and then get to the point where we wanted to get into Whole Foods.
Yeah.
And somehow, basically, and I say somehow, but Chef Phil made a connection with us to a lady named Norma at Whole Foods. And Norma became our fairy godmother. And Whole Foods has this, litany of processes to get your product on the shelves. And she set us up as a caterer for the regional president's retreat.
Yeah.
So they were on a retreat, all the decision makers for Whole Foods, right, on a retreat. And they thought they were going to get a catered lunch. And what they got was me, Tyler, and Ian in a Whole Foods food truck at Hog Island Oyster Company.
Yeah.
And we cooked them the best 3-course truffle lunch they've ever had in their life. And we had the truffle salt on the table. We had truffle honey there. And we just pitched the product to them. And at the end of it, they're like, you guys are awesome. We're going to set you guys up to go global. Which means you go into every single store in one shot. And we were so pumped. We literally thought we had made it as a company.
Yeah.
Right? We're like, this
is it. Yeah.
We did the financial projections. We're like, yeah, we'll sell like 20 cases a week per store. There's thousands of people going in. Everyone's going to want this. And we put these projections together, and we start getting ready to go into 500 stores.
Yeah.
With no idea how much it's actually going to sell,
Yeah.
And start ramping up. And what they did is they put us in 4 regions first. And so for about 90 days, and with like a sales quota to hit, right? And so we doubled the team. We went from 3 people to 6 people. And then we had, in total, we probably had like 15 people doing demos,
Yeah.
And we split up between these 4 regions and just start selling this truffle salt. Literally, all of us are doing demos in Whole Foods stores. You can book 2 a day, right? So we're all in Whole Foods stores for like 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then we have other people, we've hired other people to go into the top stores, right? Any store that has good foot traffic at the end of 2019, we were in that Whole Foods store doing a product